So welcome to people all over the world who are watching this either now or in the future. I'm Harriet Bograd, president of Kulanu, and we're so glad that you could join us. And Kulanu, for those who are new, supports isolated, emerging, and returning Jewish communities around the world. If you look at our website at kulanu.org, at the communities page, you'll see a list of 33 communities with whom we have a relationship, a partnership. In some cases, sending money to them, in other cases, just helping the world get to know them by having a web page and introducing visitors and other groups to get to know these communities. And sometimes we make other resources available. We're going to share a 1.5-minute video. People who have been here before have seen it before, but it's still fun to look at. So let's go ahead and watch the video.
Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai, Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu Chai, Od Avinu.
Thank you so much. But okay, the online speaker series, we've been having speakers twice a month since March. If you missed any, you can go to kulanu.org/recorded-sessions. We'll put that in the chat and see any of the past programs that you've missed, except one where the speaker didn't want to record. And we want to, right now, to thank the sponsors who helped support this program and tell you how much it helps when people sponsor the program. And this week we have Ruth Erilkar, Janet Lipsy, Rabbi Gerald and Bonnie Sussman, Shep Wanon, and David and Esther Weiser. Thank you so much to all of you sponsors. And we'll now go on with the program. I want to start by introducing Rabbi Eliyahu Birnbaum. I just want to say that Vanita Nathan Sussman, our first vice president, who's been the lead planner on these programs, was going to have the honor of introducing Rabbi Birnbaum. And she's having trouble with her eyes, so I'm standing in for her. But I want to thank her for her amazing work on this program. And I also want to thank our amazing staff, Molly Levine, Joanne Friedman, Jerry Krasny, and our intern, Ben Lefkowitz, for their wonderful work on this. So Rabbi Birnbaum is the founding director of Or Torah Stone's Beren Amiel and Strauss Amiel programs. Rabbi Birnbaum's vast experience makes him an excellent role model and source of inspiration. His position as the former chief rabbi of Uruguay and community rabbi in Turin, Italy, is complemented by his extensive professional work in Israel. In addition to training educational and spiritual leadership, he serves as a judge on the Chief Rabbinate of Israel's conversion courts and writes prolifically on the challenges facing Jewish communities and communal leaders. a holder of both a BA and MA in Jewish philosophy from the Hebrew University. Rabbi Birnbaum is considered an authority on matters of the diaspora, and he is consulted regularly by Israeli officials and diaspora leaders alike for advice and information regarding complex halachic questions and challenges that arise across the globe. More directly in terms of Kulana's relationship, we've been so grateful to Rabbi Birnbaum for both visiting many of the communities that we work with and helping arrange for people in our partner communities in Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Uganda, Indonesia, and I may have missed some, to come and study at his institute in Efrat, Israel, connected with Or Torah Stone. And that's been an amazing opportunity for our colleagues in these communities. So Rabbi Birnbaum, we're inviting you to introduce Ari Greenspan.
Shalom, shalom to everyone. Thanks for your words, Harriet. And many thanks to Kulanu for organizing this Zoom lesson. I am certain that we will learn a lot and we will enjoy the lecture of my friend, Dr. Ari Greenspan. First of all, I would like to congratulate Harriet Bograd and Bonnie Zussman and all the Kulanu board on the important work that they are doing with special and unique communities around the world, all around the year and as well as during the corona epidemic. I was asked to introduce the speaker, Rabbi Dr. Ari Greenspan. And you know, it's not simple. Ari, it's a multifaceted and very colorful person. He is both a rabbi and a doctor, both a shochet and mohel, both a researcher and writer, an expert in Jewish tradition and a collector of Judaica. But mainly, Ari is a person with a Jewish heart who loves every Jew, every human being, every person with a Jewish story or a desire to be Jewish. I am certain that everyone will enjoy his lecture. Welcome to this special and very, very unique meeting. Welcome to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Birnbaum, who's a partner and a good friend, and we've traveled the world together visiting and teaching in Jewish communities. My name's Ari, I'm a dentist in Jerusalem, and we have a tremendous amount to do. I'll explain to you how we're going to do this. We're going to be first doing a quick look-see in the museum so you understand sort of some of the things that, some of the things that we're going to be discussing. We're going to be discussing all sorts of different artifacts, and I think from each artifact you can learn something. What's particularly unique about my collection, are we frozen? No? What's particularly unique about my collection is that I'm not a collector of expensive stuff. I'm not a collector of fancy items. I'm a collector of pieces that reflect what happens in the Jewish world and the Jewish nation. And each piece tells a story, and we're going to share that story with you. So let's begin. What I would like to do is I would like to share my screen with you. Here we go.
They're filming from that one, by the way.
Yeah, I see. It's a crazy world that we live in. There are Jews all over the world, Jews of every color. There are communities of emerging Jewish communities, meaning what? People that weren't necessarily part of the standard or traditional Jewish life, but now have joined or have sort of developed from whatever they were doing and practicing into Jewish life. And then we have groups from the 10 tribes, groups that have all sorts of connections to Judaism, groups that were crypto-Jews, had hidden their Judaism for many years. And I'm going to show you now in the next slide an astounding video. We could talk for hours and hours. Let me vote myself. We can talk for hours and hours, but what I think we're going to do is get a move on. Before we begin the actual tour, we have to have a handle on a little bit of Jewish history and a little bit of this is area of the land of Israel. The only other out of land of Israel tribe, 1,000% were Jewish and have been Jewish since the days they separated from the Jewish people were the Ethiopian Jews. They separated off the main branch of Judaism close to 2,500 years ago. With the destruction of the first temple, the destruction of the second temple, Jews were either exiled to Asia, to the area of Persia. We know from the story of Megillat Esther that the Jews in Persia were centered in Persia, but there were 122 countries around the world that the Persian Empire was in control of, and the letters were sent to Jewish communities in each of these places. If you could see India there in the map, if you draw sort of an upside down U, right over India, that arch is all of the countries that we believe that the 10 tribes were exiled. We have many examples. Even before the Jews entered the land of Israel, 2.5 tribes decided to stay on the eastern side of the Mediterranean, which is Saudi Arabia. Yemen, the Jews have been in Yemen for at least 2,000 years. In addition, the Jews went westward. For example, we know that the community in Tunisia of Jerba has a tradition that the Jews were there 2,500 years ago. In addition, we have all of the different tribes in Africa that have some sort of a relationship. After the destruction of temples, particularly the second temple, the Jews found their way into Europe. The Sephardi Jews found their way into Spain. We know that the Jews made their way to Asia and to India. Even in the Bible, we're told that King Solomon brought back ivory and parrots from India. And finally, the Jews made their way to China. So now I am going to go to my, one second. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, very good.
It was going in and out a little bit, but it's better now.
Okay, we're going to be doing a quick, just a quick view to get a sense of some of the items that we have here, and understand that every item that you're seeing here tells a story about a specific Jewish community. Okay, lamps. We have all sorts of cloth. We even have a buffalo over here, but that's not related to Kulanu. Very rich tapestry of colors and items that will share with us a picture of the Jewish world. So now, let me go back. We're going to look at a few more slides, and then we're going to get started. It's a bit of a complicated thing here, going back between two different computers, so just please bear with me. Kulanu is helping communities all around the world, some really quite astounding communities. For example, you don't expect to see this picture, but this is one of the tens, close to 70 Jewish communities of the Igbo tribe, which claims to be from the tribe of God from the times of the Bible. And there are 70 synagogues now in Uganda that are Shomrei Shabbat, keeping the Sabbath. This is just a spectacular synagogue in the community to have built such a spectacular Aron Kodesh to hold the Torahs. This is my buddy Ari Greenspan, who's been traveling together with me since we're 18 years old. We had been in Ethiopia in the 80s, and here we returned to a village that we had been in then. And this is an Ethiopian house. People from Ethiopia tried to escape maybe close to 35 years ago. This is my good friend Yehuda Kahalani, a Yemenite in Tanzania, a Jewish community in Tanzania that we almost did not know existed until just the last few years. And Yehuda's built a beautiful little community and a beautiful little synagogue. From India, do you see the screen? Do you see India? Molly?
Yes, we do.
Okay, fine. This is a group that believes that they're from the tribe of Ephraim. This is also a spectacular community in Erode, India. There's a group of people, close to 1,500 people, that have a super dynamic leader and have decided to be Jewish, and this is their Jewish center in Erode. And finally, my good friend Rabbi Birnbaum, who introduced me, one of the most talented rabbis that I know, and here he is in front of a sumptuous, spectacular Italian Aron Kodesh made from wood and stone and gold leaf. And this just gives us a sense of some of the items that, some of the places that Kulanu is involved with and helps. There's no doubt that we are the people of the book. My daughter's telling me to slow down.
The Wi-Fi is losing milliseconds.
Okay, so I have to talk a drop slower. Molly, do you agree with that? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you, but you are cutting out a little bit every once in a while. So speaking slower would help.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
We are, without a doubt, the people of the book. When we talk about the book, we generally would think about the 5 books, the Torah itself. And if you look at the map here, we can see Saudi Arabia in the center. By the way, if you look to the right of Saudi Arabia, there are Jewish communities in Bahrain right now. There are 2 synagogues in Dubai, 2 synagogues in Dubai, right? That's like the old Jewish joke, but there are truly 2 synagogues in Dubai. Yemen, down on the bottom of Saudi Arabia. The Jews from Yemen jumped across the Red Sea into East Africa sometime 200 to 300 years ago. And in Ethiopia, there was a Jewish community of people from southern Yemen, or actually Aden. You can see there below Yemen is the Gulf of Aden. Aden is the very tip of the Arabian Peninsula closest to Djibouti on the map. And it became a British protectorate, I believe in the early 1800s or very late 1700s. And they came looking for a business opportunity. And indeed, in Ethiopia, there is a Jewish synagogue of Adenites having nothing to do with the Ethiopian Jews. And these people found business opportunities all over the Horn of Africa. So in Djibouti, which is an Italian colony, there's a synagogue, or there was one. In Eritrea, northern Ethiopia, until recently at war with Ethiopia, there was a synagogue. There still is a synagogue, and there was one Jew left. In Ethiopia, the Adenites brought with them a book, the 5 books of Moses, a 400-year-old Sefer Torah. Okay, and you can see by the parchment and the case, it was very ancient. This is Rabbi Riskin, who we brought on a tour there, and we found something spectacular and unusual inside this Sefer Torah. If you look at the letter Pei in the story of Joseph, you can see that those Peis. This is an ancient tradition that Sofrim, the rabbis who wrote the Torahs, had. And it was a very personal tradition. Most of the Sofrim never had these traditions. So we thought this was fascinating. And all this for 25 years, and we went to Eritrea, to the synagogue in Eritrea. And we said, well, you know, if they were Adenites Adenites had Eritrea, so let's open up the Sefer Torah. And Ari Zivotofsky remembered the exact pasuk, and we opened it up, and unfortunately, you can see there the word Potifera, and about the 6th line down. No, it's not there. They didn't have that ancient tradition. But wait a minute. We looked a little closer, and if you look at the Peis there, you can see that things been There are 4 pei that actually had curlicues in Addis, had the curlicues here. And some ignorant sofer came along and said, that can't be a kosher pei, and he actually rubbed it out. Books are found in every single Jewish community. This is in Uzbekistan, and our dream and our joy is finding a geniza. A geniza in Hebrew is a word for where the old, junky, broken, ripped books are kept. And sometimes in an ancient community, you can find some spectacular examples of historic works. Rabbi Birnbaum, I don't think you've seen these pictures, but I don't want you to be too jealous. This is in the cemetery in Calcutta, and they told us that this building is where all of the ancient items of the Jewish community were kept, were hidden. I said, I want to go into it. They said, well, you have to be careful because there are vipers and possibly bats. So they put together this bamboo ladder. There we go. I needed to lose some weight. And this is in the geniza. Now just listen to what's going to happen now. Here we have Dr. Greenspan in the geniza, the cemetery of Calcutta. Unmute. I'm sorry that you couldn't hear. 18th century that we found downstairs there. And finally, in Uzbekistan, in an attic, in a room that's hundreds of years old. Look at the timbers there. The Jewish community there is thousands of years old. And that sort of stone thing behind us is a matzah oven. And we wanted to see the matzah oven. Little did we know that it was going to be packed with ancient books. Okay, let me unshare this, and now we'll start looking at some books and see what we can learn from these books. Can you bring it to me now? Okay. This is a, can you hear me, Molly? Is it okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so this is a book I found in the Ottoman Empire, and it's not particularly a rare book because it's only from the late 1700s. So for people who are involved in this, you know, that's late, but it's not a particularly early book. But what I found, which is not such a rare book, it's a standard work of Jewish law, is that the first bunch of pages were missing. And somebody decided to actually write those pages. We don't value books today because they're so cheap. But here we have an example of a literally handwritten copied book at some point later in history. Looks like communist paper here. Somebody else started writing it with a blue pen. So this is an example of the value of books. So how are books made? This is a book from, it's actually, what year is it? 1704. Okay, it's an old Haggadah, and we can tell by the pages the quality of the paper. But if we look at the beginning of this, we can see the cover, and there's always a leaf or a clear piece of paper. Here it's missing, you can see. The cover is made of many layers, usually of paper or leather on the outside sometimes, but paper was expensive. So as a result, in 1987, we were kids almost. This is a book from the 1700s, 1730, and it's the book of Exodus from the Bible printed in Frankfurt. Okay, and what we see here is that the paper that was used both in the binding and the cover was often junk paper. So if you look carefully here, you can see that newspaper or junk paper of a book that existed here. This is an example of a chumash, or no, this is for Rosh Hashanah. And also, you can see this was Polish by the words, and they used just junk paper. Now, somebody was smart and discovered that sometimes in this junk paper there are some treasures. This is a book we found in a Geniza in
We're having problems with the sound.
Sorry.
Someone wrote, can something be done about the sound? It's going in and out, so talk slower.
I'm sorry that the sound is going in and out. I'll try to talk a little bit slower. This is just an advertisement. And inside the binding, we found the stamp of the religious court, the Beit Din. And this is a rebound volume of a Talmud printed in Germany. Moving back in history, the book from 1559, Rabbeinu Bachya on the Torah, and in the binding here, or in the inside of the cover, you can literally see that a printing of some sort of a Jewish book, we don't know exactly what book this is even, was used as part of the binding. And if you come down to the bottom here, you can even see somebody's signature on the inside of it. Moving forward, we found this, the matzah oven that I showed you in Uzbekistan. And I asked the owner if we could purchase it. And he said, yes, we paid for it. Not really knowing what it was, but lovingly touching this binding here in the dark, thickness of the paper, we realized that it was an old book. I didn't realize how old it was. But when we got back to our hotel, we found that it was from 1553, printed of that. But what's much more amazing is as I started to go through it, I came across something very strange. In the middle of the book, so the bottom of the page was ripped. Something was added. Molly, are you getting this? You hear me?
We can hear you, but it's still cutting in and out.
How bad?
We missed the date of this book.
Okay. The
What
date
year it
of
was?
this. Okay. The date of this book is about 1559 or something like that, 1556. I tried to find out what language this was and what was written here, because this is something very unusual to find a page ripped and something added. And we tried, it sounds like a joke, I was in the airport in Frankfurt, and there were two Muslims sitting in a bar, literally. And I went up to the two Muslims, I was wearing a kippah, and I said, do you read Arabic? So they said yes, and I asked them to read it, but it was hard for them to read. And it turned out that, it turned out that I needed to go to a specialist in New York, and it's some sort of a dialect. And here is what's amazing. There must have been Muslims who were really Jewish, and they kept their Jewish identity, even though on the outside they were Muslim. And this is a donation of the book to a Jewish person by a Muslim who says, I am following God even in the face of my master, meaning that his master who he works for, who's a Muslim, but yet he's following the real God. And two more things I'd like to show you, and then we'll get up and look around the museum a little bit. This is a book that I bought in Ethiopia. We don't see too many handwritten manuscripts anymore. This was carried around by a priest in this little container. He would hold it over his shoulder. He had a strap here. And when I asked them what it was, in Amharic, the language of Ethiopia, they said to me the following. It's called Mizmorei David. You have written on parchment a complete psalms of Tehillim in Hebrew, beautifully illustrated, written by hand, and carried by a priest. And again here, as we went to the back in the binding, we saw something written by hand. And there's a smudge of ink here. Now, this book is not written in Amharic, which is the modern Ethiopian language, but in the sacred Ethiopian language, which is called Gez. Gez is not read by most of the people. I had this translated, and it turns out that this was the last will and testament of the priest, and as proof that he actually wrote it, this blob of ink is the thumbprint of his wit. Most amazing thing that I found amongst the books was a modern book printed in Israel in the 1970s. It's a Tanakh. It's the entire Torah, including all of the other books. And I liked it because it had a map, maps in it. It was colorful. It was pretty. And since there's only one Jew left in the community, I said, you know what, this is going to go to waste. I took it, and it's not a valuable piece, particularly. There are many, many of these around. And as I took it, it fell out of the bookcase binding, and I saw it in the binding. In other words, whoever was binding this thing bound it and used junk paper that they had, in this case, cartoons from an Israeli newspaper. And if you look at this well, you can see somebody's over to the food on the table, and on his shoulder, right there, is a swastika. And I took it to Yad Vashem, and Yad Vashem identified this, the German, and his girlfriend, Magda, was her name. She also, you can see on her chest, she's sort of standing on his shoulders, there's a swastika. And this was just a piece of junk paper, I'm sure. I have no doubt in my mind that that was used to bind this book. 1 second. I'm going now to switch back to my other computer for 1 minute, and bear with me. We're going to look at a handful of pictures, and then we're going to get up and walk around. Okay, I have a particular interest in Jewish textiles. No, you can leave it here. Many unique Jewish bits of textile. Everything from this unusual cloak that he's wearing, which is in, the Nazi was Goebbels, okay? The Nazi was Goebbels. He's wearing a cloak that was unique to the Jews. He's wearing a talit. In the background, you can see the table covered by a sort of tablecloth. And this is a man in Tunisia wearing the traditional garb of everybody there. But if you notice those black bands around his feet, pay attention to those. Uganda, people with the talit, other clothing. This is in 1986, and this is a kes, an Ethiopian Jewish priest. This was the outfits that they wore. Uganda again, the yarmulke. This is my buddy, Dr. Schumann, and again, Dr. Zivotofsky with his beautiful beard in those days. And this was the nephew, actually, of Kakangulu, who was the man who was the starter of the Abu Yadaya in the early 1900s. Just a beautiful picture from a community in Nigeria where we spent Shabbat. And this is Rabbi Riskin again when we took him into Nigeria. And you can see here, talitot of many different styles. This piece we're going to look at in a minute. It's a one-of-a-kind piece in the world, found in the Turkish Empire, the Ottoman Empire. And if anybody can guess what it is, I won't give you a prize, but I'll say good for you. So let's go for a walk now and take a look. Wait. Okay. Well, of course, we have Torah Covers, and this is one of many different. It's 18 or 1700, and all of this needlework obviously was done by hand. Can you hear me? If you can't, Mali, say something. This is an unusual piece. Actually, the pillars are from the original Sharei Tzedek Hadel. In the old city of Jerusalem, they were being thrown out. This is a very simple, almost primitive parochet cover of the ark. It's sort of like a patchwork quilt. We have the traditional old-fashioned high kippot of the chazanim, of the cantors, many different types. And this is something very, very unique. If anybody has seen the chief rabbi of the state of Israel, the Sephardic chief rabbi, he wears a black outfit that's embroidered along these lines, very, very beautifully flowered and embroidered. This is hand embroidered in gold, okay, gold thread. And this is actually the dress of a Jewish woman. And this is the dress that she would wear on the Sabbath and on the holidays. Remember this, remember what it looks like, remember the embroidery. Here are the sleeves, because this is going to be very important in a moment. This thing here is a wimple, it's called. It's actually used around the Sefer Torah, and in the German communities, they would make it and wrap the baby on the day of his circumcision in it. This cloth here we found in Ethiopia, but actually we didn't realize it. There was an Israeli flag on the outside of the building, and but it was actually a church. They were Christian missionaries who made it look like it was a synagogue, and as a result, they were trying to convert the Jewish people from Ethiopia. And there's even a mistake, because the first word there is Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God, which is the first of the 10 commandments. The second one should be Lo Yelecha Elokim Acherim. You should not have any other gods besides me. But the second word there actually is not Lo Yiyeh, which means you should not have, but rather it's God's name. This is a very, very unique piece. This is Turkish. It's the old language of Turkish. Around the picture in the middle, it says Kitab el Kitab, the book of books. In the middle is actually a mosque, right? You can see the three buildings with the half moon. And yet above it, in Hebrew, it says Ezra Aleph Pinchas, the name of somebody, by the name of Ezra. His last name was Pinchas. What the heck is this? To all of my checking, we think that this might have been a talit bag for a person who believed in Shabtai Tzvi. The falser, he converted to Islam. All of his followers converted to Islam, really, and kept this kept their Judaism secretly. This was, I believe, we found this in Izmir, in Turkey. Not only do I like old things.
All right, I just want to say that several people are writing that they'd like to know, you just answered it, but where each thing comes from.
Yes. I can't hear you. You can't hear me?
Oh, I just wanted to say people asked where things come from. They're asking for what town things were found in as you go through it.
Okay, fine. I'll go through it. So if I can remember, okay? Because I told you what's important for me is the historical value, and not per se the financial value. I like things that tell a story. So, for example, this is a flag that I found in Uganda in one of the synagogues, and in 50 years or 100 years, this will tell a story. This flag here is from the American Army. It was used by the chaplains in Vietnam and Korea, maybe even World War II. Traditional Jewish clothing. This little beautiful outfit was in Tunisia. The Jews would put it on the baby when he had his circumcision. This outfit here with the little hat is unbelievable. There are at least 2 Jewish schools in Nigeria for the Igbo. And the have to wear this outfit, and it says Torah is wisdom, Makor Chaim Academy. I didn't take it. I gave them $100 for it and told them to make a new one. She asked me about the flag. This is an traditional Ethiopian woman's outfit, okay? And if you remember the movie that I showed you of those natives saying Shema, that was in Papua New Guinea. And the traditional bag, I'm covering the microphone, okay. The traditional bag that the people wore on their arms or even over their heads was this bag with the flag of Papua New Guinea, and on the other side of it, this is what you see. Okay. Do you remember the pants worn by the Jew in Tunisia that had the black stripe? Okay, so here you can see these sharwalim with a black stripe. Only the Jews ever wore a black stripe, and the reason is Zecher leChurban, remembering the destruction of the temple, that their clothing even shouldn't be perfect. A talit made from camel hair. Okay, now this is one of the most amazing things. That beautiful Jewish dress that you saw over there at the entrance that I showed you with the embroidery. What happens when a woman got fat and it no longer fit her? Or she wanted a new one and she decided that, that she wasn't going to wear this one anymore. So they would donate it to the synagogue and they would turn it into a parochet, or a wall hanging. The dress is from Izmir, I believe, or maybe Bulgaria, okay? And if we get closer to this parochet, you see there are seams in it. Can you see right here? A seam that goes down. Doesn't really fit with the whole thing. If we go up here, you can see another seam right here, going up here. It doesn't really match. This was a Jewish dress taken by a woman, taken apart and turned into maybe a wall hanging. On the top it says Kodesh Lashem. We're going to look at 2 or 3 more items and then we're going to move on. How are we with time? I'm past my time, but I'm going to go for another 5 minutes and then we'll decide if you want me to go a little bit more or not. Okay, it's up to you guys. This is an unbelievable piece. This I bought from the chief rabbi of Tangiers in Morocco. It was his grandmother's. It was his grandmother's. And you can see on the bottom, it says, Rachel Imenu, Rachel, our mother. Okay, Rachel dressed not like your average ultra-Orthodox woman would be dressed, dancing. You can see the depiction of a black African playing the lyre. You can see in the corner a moon, which is sort of the Muslim sign, and in it, it says a parochet is not necessarily a wall hanging. A parochet could be a wall hanging. We use the word parochet to indicate usually a cover for the ark in the Torah, but it also could be a wall hanging. Inside the Muslim sign of the moon, which you can see here as well, it says, Im eshkachech Yerushalayim tishkach yamini. If I forget Jerusalem, my right hand should be forgotten. A Magen David with the word Sion, Zion in it, the 10 Commandments, but here, what is this doing here? A cross on top of Rachel's head. And even more strangely, a mosque. So we have a Jewish item with Hebrew letters, with the cross, and a mosque. Unbelievable. It took me a long time to figure out what it was until I discovered that in the late 1800s, there was an organization called the Alliance Israelite, a French organization to help poor Sephardic Jews learn a trade. And they opened up a weaving school in Jerusalem and made this as a memento that Christians could buy and feel comfortable with, Muslims could buy and feel comfortable with, and of course, Jews could buy. And somehow, from the late 1800s, early 1900s, it made its way to Tangiers and then came back to Jerusalem. The picture that I showed you of a woman wearing the black outfit is my horse. Can you see the horse? What the heck are we doing with a horse with a Magen David? And you can see there's a Magen David on his head. And the answer is that when I took it to the Israel Museum, they told me they had only heard of such a thing. They had one painting, but in the background of such a thing. This was a piece of clothing put on the horse when the horse pulled a carriage to the cemetery with a dead body on it, a wagon. One more parochet here, and then we're going to go back. This is also an exceptionally unique Ottoman parochet from the Turkish Empire with pieces of silver. And even on God's name, you can see there's gold that's soldered onto it. And each of these are actually sewn on with leather. They're not even sewn on with cloth. Okay. Let me walk back to my table. Can I just ask Amali or Harriet? Do I have 5 more minutes to go?
Yes.
Okay. I will try not to go too long because I know that there's a program. I'm sorry. One moment. Screen sharing. Okay. That's the last thing I'm going to show. Matzah making. And we were about 21 years old, and we built our first matzah oven, and anybody of you remembers the I Love Luke, the barbecue that she builds and then has to go ahead and find it without Ricky discovering it. That's sort of what was going on here. We knew nothing. We didn't know what we were doing, and we built this matzah oven. Ever since then, Ari and I have been traveling the world, learning about Jewish traditions on matzah. Wherever we go, we teach matzah baking. So this is in Nigeria, but we needed a clean surface. So just as a tip to any of you that go traveling, the best plate in most of Asia and Africa is a banana leaf. So that's what we use there, the banana leaf. This is India, the B'nai Israel baking matzah. And here we have the Ethiopian Jews baking matzah. Uzbeki Jews baking matzah. And I believe right now I'm going to stop sharing, and I want to show you a matzah equipment. I have a bunch of matzah equipment. So this thing here is the matzah maker, right? In Uzbekistan, at least, this was how they did that. Many people that have never baked matzah don't know, but we use a special water that's been sitting for 24 hours to mix it. And this also came from this woman who gave it to me. This was her great-grandmother's, and she's sure that it goes back generations. And anybody who knows anything about metal, this is a hand-forged piece of metal. It's not a ladle that could be bought. This is, in theory, another matzah hole maker, and this is what it was sold to me as on eBay. But when we got to Uzbekistan, we realized that I was ripped off because this is just a standard dough making hole and design maker. And here we have a modern hole puncher to make the matzah. And here you can see my buddy Ethan actually had l'shem matzot mitzvah, for the sake of the mitzvah of matzah. And finally, in modern times, you can even get disposable matzah hole makers. The last matzah item that I want to show you is this. This flower pot with the roof tiles comes from the city of Belmonte in Portugal, which is one of crypto Jews, Jews that kept their Judaism in secret, and on the outside were Christians. And the entire 592 now years ago, they were killed if they were caught, because the Inquisition was active. So how would they bake their matzahs? Well, first of all, the inspectors were around the day before Passover, which is when the matzot were normally made. So they never baked on those days. But they would take this contraption up to their attic. They would fill the flower pot with coals. They would put the roof tiles over the coals, and they would get very, very hot, and they would secretly bake their breads then, singing songs that they had in their memory from all of that period of history. 5 more minutes or no? 5 more minutes or no? Just tell me.
I don't think anyone wants to stop. I know some people may have to go to other meetings or go on with their day, but I think most of us are spellbound.
Okay, so I need 5 more minutes, okay, and then we will we'll pass it. So I'm gonna pass on the shlita knives, which is what we have here. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. One moment. I'm here. Okay, we're gonna pass this. Let me just get to where we want to go here, and here we go. Whoops. Can you see this? Okay. Kulanu does spectacular work around the world, okay? I and Rabbi Birnbaum and Ari Greenspan and other people were doing this before we even knew that Kulanu existed. And Kulanu helps Jewish communities everywhere, all of the time. Some of the communities, like this one in Indonesia, that claim to be from descendants of crypto Jews that fled South America into the Pacific Ocean, this community is astounding. I believe that maybe we have somebody from the community, Aaron is with us, but this is how we were welcomed when we arrived. Wait. Can you hear me?
No, we can't hear.
We were hearing the video for a little, and then we lost it. Ari, do you know when you share your screen for sound, you have to click on use computer audio? If you want to unshare and then share again and click use computer audio.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back here. That's an example of a community that Kulanu is involved with. In the middle of the jungle, it's really quite an astounding thing. Here we have a little boy from the Bnei Menashe in northern India. This is also amazing. This is in Turkey. It's nothing really directly to do with Kulanu. This is a mosque. You can see that by what's inside. But you see behind us was actually the Aron Kodesh. This used to be a synagogue. Okay, this is just an unbelievable movie that I'm going to show you now. Can you see it? You seeing it on the screen? Okay. In Kurdistan, northern Iraq, where we were a few years ago, 3 years ago, there's a group of people that are called Ben Jews. They're basically locals. They're Jewish. Nobody knows that they're Jewish. Most of them are intermarried. This is a woman who married a Muslim man in the 60s, and her husband said to the Muslim man, "You must take good care." The mother said to the husband, "You must take good care of this woman,
And she's married to a Muslim, and her kids are Jewish, actually. We're going to see one of her kids in a minute in a meeting. We arranged the first meeting ever of Ben Jews. And this woman came, so I interviewed her and asked her, do you remember anything? Do you do anything that's Jewish? And she said, sure, through an interpreter. I said, well, what do you do? She said, well, I like candles. So I said, show me how you light candles. Okay, unbelievable. This is a woman, been married to a Muslim man. And I asked her, does anything bother your husband about this? And she goes to me, no, he doesn't even mind eating cold food on the Sabbath. She keeps the Shabbat, okay? And her kids are Jewish. So this is her son. And I asked him, well, do you know anything? You know, after all, his father's Muslim. Listen to what he says.
No, turn this way.
Okay, the Jewish nation is astounding. And for the Jews or the emerging Jewish groups that wish to be part of the Jewish nation, unfortunately, many of the official organs of the State of Israel or Jewish communities abroad don't offer them the answer that they need. And quite honestly, Kulanu and or Torah Nidchei Yisrael and Shavei Yisrael, a number of other organizations, but really you can count them on one hand, are the locations that help these communities. And without a doubt, Kulanu is the main one. And as we come to the end, before I show you my favorite piece, we have more in common with many of our friends and our enemies than we understand. This is in Addis Ababa, in the prayer hall. You know, who uses a prayer hall these days in airports? Well, Christians don't, for the most part, or ever. Jews rarely do. If you're religious, you might, or you'll make a minyan if you're lucky, or daven in a phone booth if you need a place to not stick out. But in Addis, we went in here and we realized that in the airport in Addis, we realized that it's only Muslims that are using it, and they actually have a beautiful place to wait on the ground with carpets. And we put on our tefillin, and they're giving us the stare. The guy in the back right of the picture, you can see he was from Saudi, and he was cursing daggers at us. But the African Muslims, of course, have a totally different approach and actually are very ignorant about a lot that was going on. And I sat there on the ground with my tefillin, having talk with our Arab cousins. I think that there's so much to be done for these communities around the world, and so few people have the opportunity to visit them or help them. And I say with all my heart, Kulanu is a location and a place that can be done. And before I end, I want to show you my favorite piece. I found this in the binding of a book. All right, I'm lifting it up for you.
No, Avi, you stop the screen share. You need to share your screen again.
Okay. Hold on. No, I'm showing it to you on my video. Okay, wait a second. Noah, can I have my phone back? Can you hold it for me?
Oh, good.
You do it because you know how to do it, and I'll just do this.
Okay. Can you see it?
No, fix this. You're over here. Look, fix this.
1 second. 1 second. 1 second.
Maybe we need video.
Yeah, we need. Okay. Can you see it now?
Hold it a little higher.
Okay, you can see it, right?
Yes.
Okay, I've got it. I've got it. This was inside the binding of a book from the 1600s, mid to early 1600s, and I don't remember which book it was. But if you look at it, you can see that there's a line and a number of letters written along the top, and then rows and rows and rows of the same letter.
They're looking at it in reverse, though.
Okay, yeah, you might see it in reverse. I see on my screen it looks like it was flipped. So this was a piece of junk paper that was found inside of a book from the 1600s. Now, I thought that the text was the writing, the script of Rashi. Rashi is one of the rabbis that wrote an explanation of the Bible and the Talmud, and he sort of had his own shorthand.
Actually correct.
But when I looked at it, I saw it wasn't Rashi. And I again did some research, and I found out that this is a script called Ktav Chatzdi Kulmus, which was the script used by almost all of the North African Jews in going back, I don't know how old it is, it's old, but before they came to Israel in 1948 and in the 50s. And in fact, until today, the old men still know how to write it. Once Ari and I were in Tunisia, and we saw the chief rabbi of Jerba translating his books that he had written in this language into Hebrew and rewriting them. And he told us that that was for his grandkids who couldn't read it anymore. So what is this? This is the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet, and it's some sort of a child learning how to write. So here's the letter Aleph, and he wrote Aleph 1,000 times. And here's the letter Bet, and he wrote Bet many times. And you can see it was a folded piece of paper, and he did it over and over and over. So now I ask you the question, what does a kid who's maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, probably 5 years old when he's learning to write, and he's holding a quill, and he's got an ink well, and he dips his quill in his ink well, and he gets bored. What do? Right? You doodle. So here's close to a 500-year-old doodle. Can you see it? Okay, on this piece of paper. And it's a picture of his mom, because on it, it actually says Mama, Papa in their writing, on a horse. And you can see their horseshoes. And the mom is sitting on a, how do you say an ukaf? A saddle, because you can see the saddle down below. And here we are. So what this shows is that that any item from Jewish life can show the richness of the community from which it came. And I don't mean richness in terms of money. I mean richness in terms of how rich in custom and tradition it was. The Jewish world is like a tapestry, I say. It was very, very rich, and customs here and customs there and customs everywhere. And yet now the Jewish world is actually sort of poor, because you don't have communities that have lived for thousands of years anymore in most of the countries around the world. They've come back to Israel. In fact, had there not been a destruction of the temple, we probably would not have had the richness, because it was only because of these people that fled Israel and found homes in North Africa, South Africa, in Asia, in Europe, that these customs began to develop. I think that as I end, and thank you for putting up with the time and so on, that you get a sense of how important it is both to try and keep some of these traditions and store them in Jewish museums, as well as, maybe more importantly, of course, supporting these distant Jewish communities. And like I said, Kulanu is the address for that. So while things are tough now with Corona, really tough with Corona, our communities have many needs. There are communities that don't have food for their people. There are communities that have food, but medical resources are scarce. There are communities that need Jewish books and Sifrei Torah. And whether it's an $1,800 donation, an $18,000 donation, or an $18 donation, Kulanu would be very, very pleased if there's any way that you could help this wonderful organization provide for the communities that they take care of. Thank you very much. Can't hear you.
Thank you, Ari. Harriet, would you like to do the Q&A now? You need to unmute. Thank you.
I'm sorry. So I wanted to thank Ari. That was an amazing program and just couldn't have been better. And even though I wanted to go into groups, I think that we should first ask some of the questions people have put in the chat. If you in the community have a question, please type it into the chat, and we'll ask Ari. Ari, do you find it easier to find ritual items for Shabbat or items for various holidays and life cycle events?
I don't think you can say. I don't think you can say there's any particular thing that you can find. You know, some communities have books. A synagogue, you're not going to find items for the Sabbath, but in somebody's house, you might find items for the Sabbath. It really very depends on the type of community and where the community is. And, you know, there are things, for example, I have on the wall, it's beautiful. I should have showed it to you. We found it in a synagogue in Romania that no longer functions as a synagogue. It's an empty building, and under the stairs, literally thrown out, was a poster from 1897 listing the name of every woman in the women's organization of the synagogue that donated money to have a Sefer Torah written. Now, that has no religious value, but it has tremendous social and historical value.
Someone asked, the brass lamp hanging in back of you, is it from Germany and how old? My late mother had one in her home and couldn't tell me much.
Okay, that's a completely Jewish item. It was used, it's called in German or Yiddish, Shabbos Lamp. That's what it's called. It was used only on the Sabbath. You can see that it can be lowered down to the, I don't know if you can see it, there's like a ratchet system that lowers it down. It was filled with oil, and each of those spouts there had a wick in it, and it was used, yes. So it's anywhere from the probably late 1700s through the 1800s.
What will you eventually do with your collection? Do you expect to donate it?
That's a really good question. What I would like to do is, and I've discussed it with Rabbi Birnbaum, is possibly open up a joint museum that would allow us to sort of show it and tell Jewish history in a slightly different way. And Rabbi Birnbaum has agreed. I see he's smiling over there. And hopefully that's what we'll do, but almost for sure it's going to have to be donated someplace. But here's the problem. Some of our stuff is very large. We have many textiles, and museums don't really have wall space. So yeah, I know there's one museum, the Diaspora Museum, wants a set that I have, but they're looking for a donor now to purchase it and give it to them. So I don't know, but it's there for the people. It's there to be seen. Anybody comes to Israel, we turn the alarm off, and you're welcome to come to see the collection.
Thank you. Where is the horse thing cover from?
That is, I found in a geniza in the basement or a thrown out area in Bulgaria, in a town in Bulgaria.
Could you repeat 3 details from the text written in Arabic indicating a Muslim still practicing Judaism? Sure. The date, location, and the dialect of Arabic, if you know it. Okay.
This is the translation. For him who has happiness and safety and longevity. Okay? This is for the person that it's being donated to, I believe. May a dove never coo mournfully, but be consoled. And may there not be any humiliation until the day of resurrection, meaning the Jews should not suffer until the day that the Messiah comes. Belonging, now this is the person who's giving the book, belonging to its poor and most insignificant owner of the book, who clings to God this very minute, who trusts in his mercy, serving his master, meaning God, in front of the Muslims. And the name of the person was Ahmed, son of Mullah Ahmed Mahmoud al-Busaidi, and the date was the 13th at night, which falls on the month of Jumadi al-Awal of the year 1195 from the Hijra, which is the Exodus when Muhammad left, which works out to be May 7th, 1781.
Where are the three little African children from? There were two pictures. One was with the Israeli flag on his face, and one was the three who were wearing
look like Hasidim. Yeah,
Hasidim, right?
They were both from Nigeria. The communities in Nigeria are just astounding. Their devotion and their excitement about Judaism. And they were both from different towns in Nigeria. I'm not sure from which. I don't remember.
Actually, we have with us, I think, Abraham Ben Abraham, who keeps a blog on the Jews of Nigeria. Abraham, why don't you write in the chat the link to your blog? Otherwise, it's actually on our webpage, kulana.org/Nigeria. It seems that the books in the Genizas would deteriorate. Is there a movement to rescue as many as possible for preservation and scholarship?
Oh, halavai! I wish there was a movement like that. There are many issues, and some communities, understandably so, don't want to share anything. They don't want to give anything up, and it's usually so sad because oftentimes the people that are there are old and dying, and they can't even read the language that the books are written. But I understand this is their culture and their heritage. But there are great problems. I mean, I can show you, I could just reach into my shelf in a minute and show you a book. Here, this one. That has, it's got dampness, and I'm not going to spend time now trying to find it, and moth and wormholes in it. Whenever I bring a book home, I put it into the freezer for 3 days to make sure that there's anything alive in it. I don't want it to destroy the rest of my library. Don't you do that when you go to Barnes and Noble? You don't do that, right? Don't put it in the freezer when you go to Barnes and Noble.
I want to read you a message from Ilana Shemesh from Israel. I first heard about Kulana when I attended a meeting in Jerusalem a few years ago where Ari Greenspan spoke about the Abiyadaya, and Rachel from Uganda came. That year I volunteered at a birth center in Uganda, and because of the lecture, visited the Abiyadaya and opened a birth center for them in Mbale after fundraising for a year. It is up and running and successful. I wanted him to know about that, and the idea was because of his inspiring talk. I've been back 3 times since then.
That's so nice. That's really, really nice. Thank you for writing that. And, it just shows how, you never know what can affect a person, and you never know what that domino effect is.
I actually want to say at the same time that we did the survey of how people heard about this. And in fact, when I saw at least a preliminary response, about 87% of the people here knew about it because you're on our Kulanu email list. So one of the best ways you can help Kulanu is to just invite your friends to add their names to our list, because then they start coming to programs and donating and telling others and volunteering, and it's a wonderful way to get started. But I'm just so impressed that such a large portion of our audience is from from our own email list. Please tell us about the circumcision knives.
So I have, I'm a mohel, I do circumcision. I have many, many antique knives, and I'll show you one spectacular knife. Today, of course, I don't use knives, I use a sterile scalpel. This is the only knife I think I've ever bought. It's very strange looking, okay? It's got a weird shape to it. It's gold. Here's gold, you can see right here on the shank of the knife. And even more interesting is if we turn the knife around, you can see that it's got gold, inlaid gold of the name of the rabbi, who is, his name is Moshe ben Shmuel Angel, okay? We know that this was one of the chief rabbis of Izmir in Turkey. This I actually bought from a Judaica salesman, and it's got a very unique shape. No Mila knife is like that. In fact, all Mila knives are actually double-sided. I don't have one here to show you right now, but all Mila knives are like a double-edged sword, so that if you cut with this side, it's sharp, and if by mistake you cut with this side, it's also sharp. You can't hurt the child. Yet this one has this strange sort of, I don't know, shape to it. And here we are, and you can put your finger on it, and it holds you very stably. I'll show you one shrita knife, which is used for kosher slaughter. This was given to me many years ago by an old European man who was a shochet. This is a knife that would be used, let's say, for sheep. This is from Russia. It's on the shank. It's in Russian. And I had this for many, many, many years. And one day, I opened up the box. This is just a classic story for a collector. I opened up this box, which opens strangely. It opens on a bit of a swivel, or I don't remember what the word is. And I opened it upside down. Okay. And then I got to look on the inside of the cover, which you would never look at. And you can see here. Can you see the writing there? It's the name of the shochet, and it's from 1892. You wonder, where is this man? Where are his descendants from the shochet who had the knife in Russia? You know, is it like most of the Russian Jews that came to America in the early 1900s, and his descendants are gone and intermarried? Or maybe not. Who knows? We don't know what happened to this man, but it's just amazing to think about the lives. Every item here that I showed you is a Jewish soul, is a Jewish life, a Jewish family, a Jewish chain of tradition. And we're part of that chain. Anybody on this call is part of that chain. And the chain is weakening, and it's up to us to keep that chain strong.
Somebody asked about the Ethiopian Torah with the curly pay, and asked, is that the Torah in the Adon Museum in Jerusalem?
No, it's still in the synagogue. In fact, that Torah was lent to the Israeli embassy when the Ethiopian Jews were all collecting in the embassy compound years ago, before they were flown out in the secret airlift. And it was given by the head of the Jewish community, Kanzan, in Addis. And the condition was, of course, that it would be given back, because it's their heritage, this 400-year-old Sefer Torah. And for some reason, the embassy decided they're not giving it back. So Kanzan got a Jeep, drove through the gates of the embassy, took his Torah, and took it back to the shul.
How do you know the dress belonged to a Jewish woman? I saw women dressed like that in Turkey in the 60s before they were bought up and sold in New York City. There was no Jewish connection.
So the answer is that I don't know who we're talking about, and I don't know what she saw, but no, I understand what she saw in the 60s. But this was found in a synagogue. I'm now going to not remember the name, Bindeli or something like that. It's a known Jewish artifact. If you check books on Jewish textiles, you'll find it. In Sofia, Bulgaria, for example, the Jewish Museum has 2 of them on display. It's a well-known thing. Now, might non-Jews have worn something similar? Well, they might have. Yeah, sure. Wealthy people might have worn such a thing. But this is what the Jewish women wore on Sabbath and holodays.
At the beginning, you referred to a remote Jewish community in India. Can you tell us more about it?
The Ero Jewish community. So I was together with Ari Greenspan and Ethan Schulman. We were the first Jews to visit this community. I don't remember now how many years ago. And the man who was in charge of the community, sort of the soul and blood of the community, was someone by the name of Sam, whose father himself had been a minister. And his father was always loving the Jews. Sam told me that in the 60s, he wasn't allowed to read newspaper or watch TV. His father would cut out any newspaper story about Israel and the Jews, and he gave it to him to read. Sam became a minister, and then ultimately created a church that had 3,000 people in it. And he slowly began to ask questions. Now, this is sort of the the process that happens with many of the emerging Jewish communities. They know Christianity, and they'll ask a question like, if Jesus was Jewish, how come, and he kept the Sabbath, how come we don't keep the Sabbath the way the Jews do? Or if Jesus was kosher, why don't we keep kosher? And a lot of times for many people, these questions lead to a series of learning and movement in sort of a continuum towards Judaism. That's what happened to Sam. And at some point in that 10-year period, before he came out and told everybody that he considered himself to be Jewish, he was completely following the Jewish tradition. He kept Shabbat, he kept kashrut in his house. He saw himself as a Jew, but secretly, while he ran a church for 3,000 people. And at some point, his son Moshe, who today is maybe 20, came home and said, Abba, he was in a Christian school, Moshe, and he says, tomorrow I'm going to be baptized, but I'm Jewish. I can't be baptized. And that caused Sam to come out and publicly say, I am Jewish. And I like to tell this story using the words of Yehuda HaMaccabee, the words that appear, Mila Shem Elai, he who is unto God, stand with me. And essentially that's what Sam did. And he said, I am now Jewish. And 1,500 members of the church left him, and 1,500 members of the church became members of a synagogue. Sam unfortunately died of a heart attack. He was such an amazing, amazing man. And today, his wife, Anne, and Moshe particularly, is running this unbelievable community.
Thank you so much, Ari. This has been fabulous. I want to remind people that Kulanu has this, you both have the opportunity to tell your friends about our recorded sessions, that these programs are recorded, and I just put the link in the chat. And also that we have a speakers bureau, and you can ask to have a speaker like one of the ones we've had, for your own organization, your synagogue or other organization, and we can work on that with you. Just use our contact form, kulanu.org/contact, if you want to make such an arrangement. I think we've gone long enough. I'll skip the breakout groups today and just wish everybody a wonderful week, and thank you so much. And I do want to remind you that in 2 weeks, we have the wonderful Professor Tudor Parfit speaking at the same Wednesday at 1 o'clock New York time, and you can figure out what time that is for you. Thank you so much.
Can I say one thing, Harriet?
Yes.
For people that would like to study more or learn more about these communities, so of course Kulanu has an extensive website, which if you haven't yet seen, you can. And I'm going to type into the chat my and my partner's website, which has a tremendous amount of halachic and historic Jewish information. And feel free to go there and you can read about some of these communities as well. Thank you very, very much.
I'll say out loud that the name of the website is Halachic Adventures. And so if the meeting closes before you copy it, you can find it that way as well. So anyway, let me just say a wonderful congratulations to Ari. That was a great program, and goodbye to everybody.
Thank you very much.